Hello and welcome to the 2013 NFL Draft Review Show for the first round. And without further ado, let's go to the NFL Commissioner, Roger Goodell.
With the first pick in the 2013 NFL Draft, the Kansas City Chiefs select Eric Fisher, tackle, Central Michigan.
That's right, the Kansas City Chiefs took Eric Fisher with the #1 overall draft pick. Now, he's an offensive tackle out of Central Michigan University. 6'7" in height and he weighs 306. Now, that's your average build for a offensive tackle. You know, I mean, they're going to probably try and use him as the franchise blindside protector for now Alex Smith. The thing that I'm not on the Eric Fisher bandwagon about is that he did play at Central Michigan University. It's a small school. Granted, in the later half of his senior year, they did get into a couple games where they were playing bigger schools, but it wasn't a constant. He didn't play week in and week out against the big schools, and that I think is going to hurt him going up against the big boys in the NFL. Now, in my mind, the Jacksonville Jaguars got the steal of the draft, and I know you can't really say it's a steal considering they had the 2nd overall pick, but to me, Joeckel was the best player in the draft. Granted, he is the same position that Eric Fisher was at. You know, Eric Fisher is 1 inch taller, but like I said, with Eric Fisher, Joeckel has played all those big games. Like, he played at Texas A&M University. He's 6'6" in height and 306 in weight. And when you have that constant, playing against the better teams in the NCAA, that's going to, in my opinion, transfer over really well to the National Football League. And that's why I think the Jacksonville Jaguars got the best pick of the draft at the #2 spot with Joeckel. Now, with the 3rd overall pick by the Miami Dolphins, they selected Dion Jordan out of the University of Oregon. He's an outside linebacker, 6'6" in height and weighs 248. Now, there's a lot of my friends that are Miami Dolphins fans that said, we really didn't need this guy. We've got players in there now to where they could, step in and fill that outside linebacker position. My opinion on it is, why take away from another position when you can go out and get a hoss like Dion Jordan is? And if you watch any film on Dion Jordan, you will absolutely see that he is a playmaker. I think by the 3rd week in the preseason, you're going to actually see just how much of a playmaker Dion Jordan is, and that's why I think the Miami Dolphins did a really good job taking him with the 3rd overall pick. Now, with the 4th overall pick, the Philadelphia Eagles and new head coach Chip Kelly did what, I like to call a see a need, fill a need. Last year, if you remember, throughout the regular season, the Philadelphia Eagles had so much problem with their offensive line. And taking Lane Johnson with the 4th overall pick out of the University of Oklahoma, I think is the best thing that the Philadelphia Eagles could do with this pick. Now, he's an offensive tackle, and he's 6'6" in height and weighs 303. Now, Vic had a lot of problems with his blockers last year, and like I said before, I think taking Lane Johnson here was the best thing that the Philadelphia Eagles could do with the 4th overall pick. Now, I don't understand the Detroit Lions pick here at number 5. I mean, I kind of do, but not really, not wholeheartedly. They take Ezekiel Ziggy Ansah, a defensive end out of BYU. He's 6'5", 271. Now, if I remember my sources right, he's only started like either 6 or 9 games for BYU. To me, that's just way too little of start time to even evaluate anybody. But apparently the Detroit Lions saw something in him. I know he's a physical beast. He had a really good showing at the scouting combine, and apparently impressed a lot of coaches whenever they had the pro day. But me personally, I don't understand taking a guy with this little number of starts such high in the draft. Now, I absolutely love the Cleveland Browns pick with the 6th overall selection. They took Barkevious Mingo, defensive end out of LSU. He is a speed freak, and at 6'4", 241, with that build, you would almost expect that out of a defensive end. That's your really tall outside linebacker weight. And I think what drove this pick for the Cleveland Browns is that their defensive ends that they already have signed. 2 years ago they had one of them that had a breakout season. He did really good. But this last year he kind of fell behind. And in the National Football League, you can't really do that. Like, you have to stay on top of your game all the time to at least stay in the game. And that's why I think the Cleveland Browns selected Barkevious Mingo with the 6th overall pick. Now, with the 7th overall pick, the Arizona Cardinals drafted Jonathan Cooper. He's an offensive guard from North Carolina. He's 6'2", 311, and to be quite honest, without doing research and stuff on him, I didn't really know who this guy was. But after doing my research, I fully understand this pick now. This kid did something rare in high school, and I know we're talking about the NFL now, but in high school he was, as an offensive guard now, he was voted his high school conference's player of the year. He's an offensive lineman. That rarely ever happens. And while at North Carolina, he racked up a lot of awards, capping it all off with a first-team All-American selection as a senior. He's extremely athletic, and his athleticism is going to be key to where he can play in a lot of different schemes. And I think that's one way that the Arizona Cardinals can get really versatile with it, is having this guy on the line. And due to his ability to lead the way on runs and his outstanding pass protection skills, I think the Cardinals did a great job selecting him with the 7th overall pick. Anyone that says Jeff Fisher doesn't know what he's doing in the league is absolute bonkers. With the 8th overall pick, the St. Louis Rams selected Tavon Austin, wide receiver out of West Virginia University. Now, Tavon Austin, he's 5'8" inches tall, he's 5'8", he's 5'8" inches in height, and he only weighs 174 pounds. With that body, you would expect explosiveness, and he is the most explosive player in this year's draft. And I think Jeff Fisher did a great job selecting Tavon Austin. Sam Bradford now has a very versatile weapon on the edge, and more importantly, in the return game. And if you look at tapes and stuff like that, everybody was praising, the West Virginia quarterback, Geno Smith, having all these yards and stuff like that, when a lot of the plays that they were run were little, they would snap the ball and Geno would just pitch the ball in the air up 3 inches, and on a sweep play, Tavon would grab the ball and run for 40, 50 yards almost every single time. And that's what racked up Geno Smith's yards. That's why I'm not really, keen on Geno Smith. But hey, we're talking about Tavon Austin right now. And, I completely understand this pick by the St. Louis Rams. I think that there was nobody else better to go to the St. Louis Rams. And, the thing that you got to remember about Tavon Austin is that if he's got the ball in his hands, do not take a blink. He will accelerate and be gone before you know it.